Thank you so much. That was such an engaged and incisive contribution to the debate, Martha. So moving on to our second opposition speaker of the evening, we have Andre Spicer. Andre is the Executive Dean of the Bayes Business School. He's the Professor of Organisational Behaviour there. He's known for his research on well-being, organisational politics, organisational culture, workspace and leadership. Andre, you have the ears of the House.
I don't know why I'm here. Got no idea. I was trying to figure out why I was invited, and I thought, well, it was probably because of this rather strange article I wrote in The Guardian at the middle of the winter break. You know, we all get bored at winter. And it was this idea that AI creates bot shit, right? So we humans, we spend a lot of our time bullshitting each other, right? It's in our nature. We like to bullshit. When we're sitting around, our friend up here, you've probably been doing a bit of bullshitting every now and then. You too? And my friend over here, Ed Sheeran, maybe a little bit. I'm a bullshitter. We're all probably bullshitters if we own up to it. Go for it.
I'm just curious because based on OpenAI, based on Stability AI, based on Mistral, they have almost a 98% non-hallucination rate. So is it really hallucination? I do agree with some of your ethics, but just curious to see if it is really bullshitting or is it actually proper technology that has substantive, grounding behind it.
I think this man's onto something. We're going to go there. So, this is what I was thinking. It is bullshitting, there's a bit of hallucination in it, but it's actually very small. If you speak with the people who are technically involved in it, it's very small. So I was invited to come along here, and I thought, I'm going to talk about it against it. Then I was told I had to speak on the oppositional side. Okay, and I thought, okay, this is dangerous. Then I thought, okay, let's go and actually check out the scientific literature. Let's look at the history, and let's try and humble our opinions for a second. And that's what I did. And when I began to look at it, I found out that there was a couple of points. Number one, which I'm going to go into, the history of liberal democracy is a history of technology. It's a history of modern technology. Every major innovation in liberal democracy, and actually whichever version of democracy you choose to eat up in your chocolate box of democracies, has actually been kind of at least co-evolved at least. Some would say partially driven by technology, modern technology of the time. The second point is, which I'll get to, if you actually look at how an experimental studies, proper studies published in places like PNAS, places like Science, how these things are used, what impact it has, what you tend to find is that they actually have a pretty positive effect overall. There's many negatives, which we've heard all about, and our opposition here is correct, but there are many positives which these things can have on political debate, both the quantity and actually the quality of it. So, let's take the first point, history. Just a bit of a kind of a little potted history for a second. If we look at the basic point here is that democracy always, at least to some extent, will rely on new innovations and technology, which shape and shape the direction of technology beyond simple face-to-face conversations. Let's just take a quick tour. Invention of the printing press in the 15th century. This leads to the creation of many of the basic institutions of voting, parliament, and it moves to a tiny franchise in the UK of about 2%. Move forward to the 17th century. We see a revolution in transport in many European countries, improved printing technology leading to regular voting, and the emergence of the modern parliament. Move forward to the 19th century. You see the invention of new forms of printing, the telegraph. You see then the extension of the male franchise, and eventually the female franchise, and extension of the bureaucratic institutions of liberal democracy, but also of voting and many of the other things which you spoke of. Move forward to the 20th century, broadcast technology. You see the rise of mass political parties and also process of decolonialisation associated with more voting. Then into the middle of the 20th century, TV, you get the rights revolution of the 1960s. Then we move on to the big evil, social media. You see the rise of the Arab Spring, identity politics, and a deepening of democracy to unheard of issues which have been totally unconsidered as political. Often, this is pointed to the rise of populism and many negative aspects. I was genuinely kind of convinced on this argument. Our colleagues here, had given good points about it. I then went and looked at the literature, and I asked, looked at what do the studies on this say. The biggest meta-analysis I could find on the role of the impact of social media on political participation, which is about 300 studies, 300,000 people plus, found that actually implementation of social media in different kind of spaces, which is about 50 countries, led to more political engagement, which was measured not just in terms of people talking on Twitter, but it was things like lobbying, engagement and talking about politics, participation in local politics, all of the basic kind of grassroots activity of politics, which we're often told. Actually, social media has got us more interested in politics, more interested in the basic institutions of parliament. Yes? Yeah.
Particularly virulent, aggressive, divisive form of engagement, which is what's so damaging.
You're absolutely right. I agree with you 100%. Now, this is where the next thing comes in, which is the AI revolution. So one of the problems is that engagement in politics has gone up. And my favourite analysis of this, the guy's name slips my mind for a second, but it's led to a lot of political amateurism, which is basically instead of watching sports and shit talking against your hated player, you focus on your hated politician. And we spend politics, it's like a kind of a hobby, basically, I think. Probably true. But the interesting thing is that the implementation of AI, which we're told will, lead to all sorts of authoritarianism and all those kind of things, which might be true. The only high-quality study which I could find on this in the scientific literature published last year in PNAS, one of the top 3 scientific journals in the world, shows that when you have a political debate, people from 2 sides of the argument on totally different issues, gun control, abortion, whichever divisive issue which you want to take, then Brexit, whatever, what you tend to find is that without the intervention, they had 2 groups. One group had no intervention of AI. They fought, they battled, they got into fighting, speaking awful things to each other. The second group, they said, okay, do you want AI to be a co-pilot in the debate? And they said yes. What they found is they were more polite to each other. They used better arguments. They listened to each other, gave each other more space. Crucially, they didn't tend to change their minds, but at least the quality of the debate, which this gentleman was pointing towards, was higher. So I think AI gives us a possibility of potentially having better political debate. Yes, there are many problems. We know about hallucination and bot shit. We know that it could be dominated by terrible political actors. We know it could become an existential threat if we let it make us decisions. But we also know that from, again, research, we as humans, we tend to always focus more on negatives because, evolutionary speaking, the negatives will kill us, right? The positives will give us a bit of a gain, but the negatives potentially will kill us. So we tend to focus on the negatives, and we tend to disregard and downplay the positives. So there are some potential positives that we could focus on a bit more. And these, according to research on the design of politics, would point to AI providing us the ability for politer discussion. Imagine having an AI co-pilot with that really annoying person you have to discuss with. It gives people the ability to lower the cost of campaigning. Yes?
Is that really a good thing for democracy if we stop talking with each other and delegate our points?
No. The point is that you have a friend alongside of you who's going to help you build the best quality argument possible, which is going to help you to have a better quality argument with someone else. No, we're in the last minute. Sorry, I'd love to hear from you afterwards. So it's going to lower the cost of campaigning. One of the biggest problems, as we've heard from our friends over here, that it costs a lot to get into politics. AI in many ways will lower the cost of doing that in many, many ways. It will help to improve the administration of elections. It will improve our infrastructure, and as I've said, it will help to improve our deliberation. So instead of rejecting out of hand this new technology, which might help us, and as was so eloquently put up the top, it might not help us, I think let's just give it a chance. Let's see the democratic possibilities in it, and let's welcome, potentially, a useful co-pilot into our lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that unique and well-informed